Thanks, Sarah. And once you let everyone in, I'll give it a go. So I'm going to pause and then I'll start. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 10th meeting of the Boston Art Commission. My name is Karen Goodfellow, and I'm the Director of Public Art in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. In that capacity, I'm also the Director of the Boston Art Commission. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we're conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Boston Art Commission, the public can join this meeting through telephone and video conferencing. For those of you with us today, this meeting is being recorded and closed captioning is available. You can access it at the bottom of the screen. Please let us know if you're having any trouble with that. I also ask that everyone update your name, your pronouns, and double check to make sure that you are on mute. The Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the Boston Art Commission believe that public art is any artwork installed in publicly accessible spaces where they can be experienced by everyone for free. We engage in discussions about public art in Boston in order to foster the creation and collection of artworks that reflect the people, ideas, histories, and futures of Boston, which is on the traditional homeland of the Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the continuing presence of the Massachusetts as well as the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples. We also recognize the Indigenous peoples represented in the city's residents in addition to those in the diaspora. For transparency and community input, artworks proposed for City of Boston property are reviewed at these public meetings of the Boston Art Commission, the BAC. The BAC is the commissioning body for the City of Boston, working together with the public art team in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. The Boston Art Commission is an independent board composed of 2 ex officio and 7 independent community members appointed by the mayor who volunteer to review, discuss, and vote on matters concerning the city's art collection at public meetings. The BAC has exclusive authority to approve and commission artworks intended to be added to the city's collection or to be placed on city property. Our meetings are generally held on the second Tuesday of each month to review current public art projects cited on or proposed for city property, although our next couple meetings may not be on those regular days, which we will discuss in a little bit. And we hope that you will continue to join us. The Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture has a dedicated public art team that manages all daily operations and duties related to public art projects cited on or proposed for City of Boston property. This team facilitates the Boston Art Commission's monthly public meetings and manages all phases of Boston's public art projects in collaboration with the BAC, community members, and colleagues at the City of Boston. Helping to facilitate this meeting are Sarah Rodrigo, Senior Public Art Project Manager, and Amber Torres, Public Art Project Manager, as well as Liza Quinones, Mural Consultant from Street Theory.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome, everyone. I'm calling this public hearing to order at 4:36 p.m. Today, the Boston Art Commission will be holding its monthly public meeting. I will now take a roll call of the commissioners to confirm a quorum. After I state your name, commissioners, please say here. I'll begin with Vice Chair Ekwa Holmes.
Here.
And I'll add a note that Ekwa has a voice issue, so she's weighing in very limited fashion, but thank you for joining us, Ekwa. Camilo Alvarez.
Here.
John Andres.
Here.
Michael Canizzo. Not here. Cara Elliott Ortega.
Here.
Robert Freeman.
Here.
Brian Hone.
Here.
And Kim Pinder.
Here.
Great. So we do have a quorum. We will now review meeting minutes from the April meeting of the Boston Art Commission. Are there any comments or modifications a commissioner would like to make at this time? Hearing none, I wonder if we could have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Camilo. So I'll take the roll call again. If you're in favor of the motion, please say yes. Ekwa?
Yes.
Camilo?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Cara?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Kim?
Yes.
Great, so the motion passes. On this next slide, you will see today's agenda, which is also posted publicly on the city's website, boston.gov. We have a slight change to the order of the presentations. The short-term loan of the Emancipation Group will be the first presentation for review tonight. We will begin with the director's report, followed by presentations for review. Before we begin presentations, we will provide you with information about how you can participate in the discussion. We'll now have Karen Goodfellow give her director's report. Karen?
Thanks, Mark. We have 6 presentations for review today. A proposal to loan the Emancipation Group temporarily to LAX Art in the LA MoCA for a 2023 exhibition. Pictures of the Year, a short-term installation from the Boston Press Photographers Association, who we've seen before, a signage proposal for the Boston Women's Memorial proposed by the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. Beam Me Down, a short-term installation by Now and There Accelerator artist Eli Brown. And Final Design for Soul Revival by Victor Marca 27 Quinones. And Final Design for Turmoil by Sobek for the Roxbury Branch of the Boston Public Library. We are also saying farewell and good luck to our colleague for the past 3 years, Tricia Gilrain. Tricia started as our collections manager in the spring of 2019. We're grateful for her work, especially for the support she provided to this commission as we navigated the landscape of Boston's memorials over the past 3 years. And we are also welcoming the Indigenous Public Art and Cultural Spaces Consultant, Indigenous Public Art and Spaces Consultant, Erin Genia and Tanya Tone. Erin Genia Sisseton Wahpeton Dakota is a multidisciplinary artist, educator, and organizer whose practice merges cultural imperatives, pure expression, and material exploration with a conceptual. She seeks to create a powerful presence of indigeneity in the arts, sciences, and public realm to invoke an evolution of thought and practice that is aligned with the cycles of the natural world and the potential of humanity. Tanya Tone is a museum director, curator, and scholar of material, cultural art, and textiles. Tone serves museums, galleries, and project spaces across the United States, Canada, and Europe. Tanya credits Boston in her success in the arts, where she maintained her connection to the community since childhood. Her writing on art and visual culture is published in Hyperallergic, First American Art Magazine, and the American Indian Culture and Research Journal. They'll be looking at our public art processes, advising on working group members and other partnerships, and eventually providing a final report documenting and describing work accomplished and obstacles, summarizing process and learnings, and recommending next steps. This will be a 2-year process, with the first year really focused on research and the second on implementation. And they may be in attendance. I don't know, Erin and Tanya, if you are here, I'm going to say hello briefly.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you so much. Erin Genia Imakia BA. I'm an enrolled member of the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate and a former artist in residence with the city. I'm so excited to begin a new role with the city in partnership with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, the BAC, city offices, and the Native American and Indigenous people and communities in our city. It's a real honor to partner with Tanya Tone and to consult with the city on Indigenous public art and cultural spaces. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody. Wopira tanka.
Hi, this is Tony Atone. I'm thankful and grateful to be here today to learn more about the current projects in Boston. I want to extend a welcome to all on this learning process here, and then an appreciation to the City of Boston and Erin for this collaboration. I look forward to learning more from you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a few updates to share, and you can see on the screen 2 major updates on community-initiated commissions this month: the groundbreaking for the 1965 Freedom Plaza, the future site of the Embrace, memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King by Hank Willis Thomas, took place on April 27th, and you can see a photo from King Boston at the bottom. and the bas-reliefs for the African American Veterans Memorial by Karen Udemy, which will be cited in the Justice Edward O. Gourdine Park, along with the portrait of Justice Gourdine by Fern Cunningham, have been cast. Photographs of one of the 10 bas-reliefs can be seen on top. The image on the right is the bronze casting prior to cleaning, and the top left image is a screenshot of the digital scan of the same bas-relief before it was cast. It represents the African American veterans of the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. It is not portraying an individual. And now we'll review long-term city-initiated public art projects. On the right, you can see images from a workshop with Curtis Williams at the Alston Brighton YMCA April Vacation Camp at the Charles View Community Center in Alston, organized by Liza in collaboration with the after-school program team. Librarians from the Fontaine branch of the Boston Public Library also attended, and 25 children created artworks with Curtis. 2 of the projects and final design are here for review tonight. Later in this meeting, Marker 27 will present his design for a mural at Washington Manor at 1701 Washington Street, which is part of the Transformative Public Art Program. And Sobek will present his final design for his project at the Roxbury Branch of the BPL. And continuing our updates, Destiny Palmer and project manager Amber Torres hosted a workshop at the Vine Street BCYF over the April vacation week with the generous assistance of David Hinton, administrative coordinator for the center. You can see a couple images from the workshop on the right, and we look forward to seeing Destiny's final design in the near future. Artist reviews for the Malcolm X basketball court murals are underway. We received 44 submissions, including a strong showing from the local arts community. And also Paintbox is open, and we've been getting some press, so we're expecting a lot of applications again. Amber is taking on the project this year, so she's really being introduced to public art project management with a rush of applications. The call opened on May 2nd. It will close on May 27th, so please share the call. And Amber's going to be hosting a question and answer webinar on Thursday, May 12th. 2, I think. We're aiming to do 80 to 100 boxes again, and all questions can be sent to Amber Torres. And we'll review collection projects. We're working on a contract with Mass Consortium to scan the Emancipation Group with the help of our Director of Administration Finance, Naida Faria. We are finalizing those plans. And we are meeting later this week with Daedalus, Josh Crane, to determine the final list of conservation projects for this year based on their comprehensive report, the audit that they did. And the Boston Marathon marker by Pablo Eduardo was repaired by the artist and his team before the marathon. And here is the proposed schedule for the summer. So because of some project deadlines, we propose sort of shifting things forward a little bit instead of having our regular meeting in June to meet again on Tuesday, May 31st, and then to meet on Tuesday, June 28th, to cancel our July meeting and to go back to our normal schedule for August. And these will all be posted with the clerk's office like usual, but just wanted to put it out there. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And I do want to say a welcome from the commission itself to Aaron and Tani. We know you already, but it's nice to have you folded into the work that we're doing together in collaboration. So welcome, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. And also, I'd like to just say a personal word of thanks to Trisha. I don't think she's here, but she was really a big influence on the shape of the commission, and so we thank her as she departs. With that, we'll now move on to items on the agenda for review, public testimony, and commission vote. Here's how you can participate in today's meeting. During the meeting, please keep yourself muted. If you have technical difficulties during the meeting, you can ask questions in the chat and a member of staff will help you. After presentations and commissioners clarifying questions, I may invite the public to give testimony. If you'd like to participate, you can press the raise your hand icon and staff will put you in a digital line for comment. You can also let staff know that you have a question in the chat. If you are calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. Please remember to keep your comments on topic and brief. Our goal is to make this meeting a good experience for all so that community members feel comfortable sharing their feedback and questions. Be mindful of and respectful of other people's time when speaking so that other participants feel comfortable adding their comments. You can submit longer written testimony to us at BAC, at the email bac@boston.gov. While you may disagree with other attendees' testimony, you may not interrupt them during their allotted time. Please keep questions and comments project specific. If you're called on, please state your name, title, program, and organization if it's relevant. Our next presentation for review is an outgoing loan of the Emancipation Group for an exhibition in Los Angeles in 2023. Hamza Walker, Director of LAX Art, or LAX Art, will be presenting.
Great. Okay, that was indeed my cue.
Welcome, all the
Yes,
way
thank
from
you.
Los Angeles.
All the way from Los Angeles. Such is life now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking our request for the loan. And I just want to state that I'm also joined this afternoon by two colleagues, Hannah Burstein, as well as Bennett Simpson. Hannah is the project manager of monuments, and Bennett Simpson is the senior curator at LA MoCA. So just some background on the project for which we seek the loan of the Emancipation Group. It's for an exhibition entitled Monuments, all in caps. All in caps is not part of the title of the show, even though I have had friends say that they think it should be. So Monuments, it is set to open in the fall of 2023, and it is a co-organization between LAX Art and LA MoCA. It will be taking place at the Geffen Center, which is one of two facilities that MoCA has, and it is the larger of the two facilities in downtown Los Angeles. It's nice to have a facility that can actually handle an exhibition of this scope. We are borrowing 15 to 16 monuments, bronze statuary, that have been decommissioned. The core of those monuments, the core of that group, are Confederate monuments. And this exhibition couldn't happen without the participation of the various municipalities. So we understand that it's a big lift in lots of ways in that regard. So again, thank you for hearing our request. So can I go to the next slide? So the project consists of three components, the core of which is the exhibition itself. The exhibition itself will consist of 15 monuments, the core of which will be decommissioned Confederate monuments. Those will be accompanied with works of contemporary art. There'll be a mixture of pre-existing works and commissions. There will also be a publication, a scholarly publication. And right now we have 14 writers signed on, and they're historians, art historians, leading scholars from the field, and also public programming will be a part of it. So it opens in the fall of 2023, and we haven't set, it'll run 4 to 5 months. So we anticipate for the length of the exhibition. Next slide. So here we go, the context of the exhibition. And the next slide. And so the current wave of decommissioning of monuments started with the events of 2015 in Charleston, the massacre at Mother Emanuel Church. The Charleston 9 on the left are the 9 victims of the shooting perpetrated by Dylan Roof, who's in the upper right-hand corner. That initiated the dialogue about taking, Dylan Roof being a neo-Confederate, that initiated the dialogue about taking the monuments down. 10 days after the shooting in 2015, Bree Newsom went up the state capitol in South Carolina. She went up the flagpole to remove the Confederate flag, and that was basically the kind of first act of decommissioning, the gesture of the statement that these things need to come down. So can I get the next slide? It took 2 years for Mitch Landrieu, mayor of New Orleans, to get legislation through the city council to remove the four Confederate monuments in New Orleans. And so New Orleans was in effect the first to fall, essentially. All right, so can I get the next slide? That was concurrent with efforts in Charlottesville to remove its Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson monuments. But in the case of Charlottesville, it was met with a protest, the Unite the Right protest, I believe it was August of 2017. And that sparked then a wave of counter protest. So if I can get the next slide, which led to a number of monuments being removed in reaction to the protests in Charlottesville. I think between 2017, by the end of 2017, upwards of 44 monuments had come down. And in early 2018, that's when the idea for the exhibition came into being. So there's some removals of North Carolina, Dallas, and Raleigh, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Dallas, and Durham, North Carolina, were all part of the removals in response to Charlottesville. So can I go to the next slide? The second wave came about after the summer of 2020 and the murder of George Floyd. That resulted in 150 additional monuments coming down by the end of 2020. So when the project began, we were looking at a total of 30 to 40 monuments for the project. And then at the end of 2020, that number went up to 160, 170 monuments. So the exhibition is very much unfolding in real time as the municipalities and institutions that took them down are still trying to figure out issues of stewardship. So if I can go to the next slide. So here are some of the removals that happened after 2020. So Dallas again, Raleigh, and then Richmond, Virginia, Monument Avenue, who were borrowing 4 monuments from Richmond, Virginia. So next slide. Yeah, so here's the exhibition. So we've secured the loan of 15 bronze statues. So the next slide. And here's the team, the curatorial team, Bennett Simpson, myself, and Carol Walker. The next slide. And this is the Geffen, which is downtown Los Angeles. I think it's 40,000 square feet. And it was also the place where they did a Richard Serra retrospective. So structurally, it can handle the monuments. Next slide. And so here are some of the monuments that we've secured for the project. Houston, Texas. This is the Spirit of the Confederacy. That's John Guess on the right. He's the director of the museum, the African-American Museum in Houston, who are the stewards of this allegorical male figure. So they will be loaning this piece. Amate, who's also the artist who did the doors at the Capitol building. Pittsburgh will be loaning this work, which is Stephen Foster. And I included this slide because it is the closest, in a sense, to the emancipation group, insofar as both were removed because of the representation of the Black figure. And Stephen Foster was the preeminent 19th century American music composer, Oh Susanna, My Old Kentucky Home, Camptown Races, and he wrote a number, Old Black Joe, and he wrote a number of songs to accompany minstrelsy shows. And here he is seated atop his muse, Uncle Ned, composing the song itself, Uncle Ned. So the next slide. We'll also be borrowing these street signs from Montgomery, Alabama. Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy, bearing in mind that the South was the geographic terrain for both the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. And so Here we have the intersection of Rosa Parks and Jefferson Davis Avenue, right? So you got the layers of history as they're literally played out, right, through this kind of signage. So we'll be borrowing these signs and the stop sign as well. Jefferson Davis Avenue has since been renamed Fred Gray Avenue. Fred Gray, prominent civil rights attorney. He was actually Rosa Parks' attorney. If I can get the next slide. So to go from the smallest piece of material culture that we'll be borrowing, the street signs, to what I believe is the biggest of the monuments that we'll be borrowing. This is Matthew Fontaine Murray. This will be coming from Richmond, Virginia. This is one of the ones that came down from Monument Avenue. Matthew Fontaine Murray was a general in the Confederate Navy. Here he is in his civilian garb. He's considered the father of modern day oceanography. And this allegorical globe vignette above him, the seas as the source of trade and immigration, right? But he had deep-seated beliefs about the Americas and the use of slave labor to extract natural resources from South America. So I would say that that's also inside of that allegory. So we'll be borrowing this piece, and that is what he looks like on the left as he has been paint bombed. So we're borrowing them in their current states. So next slide. And so here are the artists that we've approached about commissioning. The next slide. Yeah. So it's the list that we have so far, and it is, what have we got, 10, 12 artists here. All right, it's a mix. A lot of them are right now, in terms of where they are in their careers, just beginning to experience their first initial success as artists. So there are only a couple of, I would say, Stan Douglas maybe is the Kevin Jerome Everson are probably the oldest of the artists in the crew. All right, the next slide. And the Stonewall Jackson is one that we actually took possession of. We own this one, and this is one that we are in discussion with an artist who will do a commission, and they are able to do with what they will with the piece. So unlike the other pieces which we're borrowing and then returning, this is a piece that we're able to give to an artist to have them transform it however they see fit. They can either melt it down, should they so choose, or keep it as is and have it be part of the installation. So with respect to the loans, everything will be it's a museum loan following all museum protocols. Everything is going to be insured wall to wall. They'll be handled by professional art handlers. In this case, the logistics will be handled by Methods and Materials, which is an outfit out of Chicago that has a national reach. So the next slide. Yeah, here we go. So these are just some of the existing works of art that we'll show. Next slide. Leonardo drew, this is 500 pounds of cotton, right, and arranged in a minimalist rectilinear slab. Okay. Next slide. The series by Nona Faustine, the White Shoes series, where she went around to sites, slave sites, including burial sites, auction sites, plantations around New York City, where she is either bare-chested or completely nude. That is the artist, at these various sites. Very strong body of staged photographs. Next slide. John Henry, the Stranger Fruit series, where he has approached mothers and sons, Black mothers and their sons, to adopt the pose of the Pietà, essentially. And there's and he's done this all over the country. I can't remember how many we'll be borrowing. I think 14 works from this series. It's a very strong series. And the sites where the mothers and sons are posing range from the interiors of apartments to outdoor scenes. And obviously this is a commentary on violence, police violence. Shootings. Next slide. And Hank Willis Thomas, this piece, for those of you who grew up 1970s, well, it's probably Nick at Night, it's probably still in circulation. The Dukes of Hazzard. This is a way of having representation of the Confederate flag in the exhibition. And the piece is called Suspension of Hostilities is the name of the piece. And the car that the Duke boys drove was called the General Lee. Next slide. I think that might be the last one. Right. And so we'd like to borrow, obviously, the Emancipation Group. So yeah. So that's it for the presentation. Oh yeah, and here are the basic nuts and bolts. And right now, as it stands, we are hoping, and we're in conversation right now with the city of Richmond, in the hopes that the show might travel. So nothing has been formalized, but we're in discussion with the city of Richmond and also with another institution that I can't name at the moment on the East Coast as that would take the exhibition. So we might be returning to you guys for an extension of the loan, should you be willing to loan it. And fingers crossed that the exhibition would travel, given that it is of national significance.
Thank you very much. And I'll open it up now to questions, but I might start off with a question of my own, which is, I think this is exciting in terms of the mission of what we discussed when we did remove the piece and what we heard from our community about wanting it not to be melted down or lost, but actually to be interpreted and to be understood and to be an educational, to make it an educational moment, and perhaps also a moment that could spawn new art in response to the piece. So I think there seems to be, at least in my sense, a good mission alignment. I'm curious how much interpretation you will provide. Our statute certainly is quite different from some of the other ones in terms of the history and the kind of meanings, but it has its own story. And, our process was incredibly emotionally overwhelming for me. And one of the proudest moments I've had on the Art Commission was listening to our community tell us about this piece in something like 600 letters and many hours of testimony. So I'm curious if there will be, some amount of interpretation of the pieces that you can share a little bit more about.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, it will. We're very honored to be co-organizing this exhibition with MoCA, which of course, fully accredited museum. Each one of the monuments will be accompanied with a full, far beyond simply the who, what, when, where, why, how narrative. In the catalog itself, all of the monuments will be a breakdown on their art historical significance, why they were chosen for the exhibition. In the case of the Emancipation grouping, obviously it stands in stark contrast to the Confederate monuments, right? This is another side, right? This is the with its problems intact, right, in terms of the representation of the Black figure. But then there's a whole narrative about who he is, right, in the fact that he was self-emancipated, right, which is one of the narratives that we want to bring to the foreground. So each one of the monuments will have a full art historical, be contextualized art historically, both on the walls of the museum itself, as well as in the catalog. Now, we are asking artists to, we're giving them the whole spate of works that we're borrowing to respond to. And I can't imagine that there won't be an artist who won't respond directly to the Emancipation grouping. I mean, it's iconic as a work, but it will be no shortage of discourse around, will be made available around that particular piece. Yeah.
Great. And I'll just add that we do have, beyond the statue itself, beyond the bronze, we have quite a lot of archival material, other content, as does Historic New England, has archival imagery of it, from the late 1800s. So there may be some content, especially around a catalog or other kinds of settings that if we do come to this agreement, that it would be great to support you in that effort to tell a broader story about it. I would just encourage the story of the process of its removal is also quite interesting, and the questions that came up in contemporary society would also be interesting. So I see Kim has a question, so I'll open it up to Kim.
I'm just following up on the idea of contextualization. So, hey Hamza, I'd love for you, I know we talked a little bit about this when I saw you recently, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, again, might be not totally fleshed out yet, but how the juxtaposition of the borrowed or just older monuments with the contemporary work, how you envision that. If you could just give us a little bit of a sketch on just the physical juxtapositions that are going to happen in the space.
Right, and it'll be a case-by-case basis in some sense. I mean, in some areas of the exhibition, the monuments will be, I imagine, standalone. In others cases, they'll be placed in direct dialogue with works of contemporary art. And in some cases, as I was mentioning before, the compare and contrast, just to make note of the Stephen Foster monument and why it was removed versus the Emancipation grouping, right? Mm-hmm. So to have those kinds of dialogues be made apparent in the show would be quite important. But we haven't fleshed out. We had our very first meeting, Bennett and I, with the floor plans for Mocha Geffen to see to make sure to see if it'll all fit. First of all. But with respect to artists engaging directly with the monuments, to see if there are those artists who, in what it is that they would come up with, what degree of proximity their plans involve, right? In terms of making an installation, is the piece somehow incorporated into that installation? Is it nearby? Where does it sit? So those things are still being worked out.
Thank you.
Hi, Hamza. Thank you for that presentation. My name is Robert Freeman, and I'm an art commissioner. I also chaired the committee to kind of look at next steps for the Emancipation Group monument. And I have a concern, and my concern is that we are in communication with the city of Cottleville, Missouri. And that's where Archie Alexander, the kneeling slave, as you know, lived for 30 years. He was kind of a local hero in that he saved the lives of Union troops. And what they've done in Cottleville is they've constructed a national park for him. And we are in communication with long-term loans with the Emancipation Group to be installed in that park. So I have some concerns about timing. We're also in communication with the Lincoln Museum in Missouri, and although that's not a committed process right now, it's in conversation. So although I think this is a very exciting show, and it's an exciting show that I certainly would love to see, I worry just a little bit about our timing and what might get in the way of making particularly the Cottleville long-term loan happen for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd be willing to work with any and all parties to see if we can, figure out a schedule, So in terms of, transport, the loan, getting it to where it needs to be, we're willing to take that on, right? So if it's coming from A and it goes back to B, or it needs to go back to B for a second, I mean, that's, in terms of those kinds of logistics, we're completely open and willing to work with any and all parties.
This is Hannah Burstein speaking, and that return trip and all that shipping logistics would be paid for by LAX Art and MoCA in full. So if that helps, alleviate, even if the loan doesn't happen, the long-term loan doesn't happen in the immediate, we can help alleviate some of the costs of getting it to that long-term loan, if a little bit later than initially anticipated.
Right.
I would find that to be very helpful.
Yeah.
And we actually would like Cottleville to be part of the story as
Mhm.
well.
It'd be nice if you, engaged with Cottleville.
Yeah.
I see Cara has her hand up.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that the point that was just made about involving that piece of the story potentially as well. And I think Bob, correct me if this is wrong, but it does seem like there's also some fundraising and kind of capacity that we need to partner with Cottleville on in order to do this kind of next piece of the story with this artwork. And I wonder if something like this could actually raise the profile of that in a way that could be helpful towards those ends. So I think, I wonder if we could see it as like, this could be that kind of intermediary step that helps us get to that long-term solution with Cottleville.
Very, that I can't say enough. One of the goals of the exhibition, on the one hand, everybody knows that this is a front of mind issue, that it is a national issue. The monuments have come down, what to do with the monuments. Then at the same time, it is also very much a hopelessly local issue in terms of what various municipalities or institutions, and everybody's like, I don't know, what should we do with it? You know? And so trying to have an exhibition in which it is, we can talk to one another, right? And to raise the profile on the issue in some sense, while maintaining the integrity and understanding that it is still a case by case, town by town, county by county set of circumstances, right? But having folks be aware of different approaches and different ideas, right, I think is very important about the exhibition. Now, so for example, Richmond, which we're considering because of the nature of our request to them for the four monuments, and also the fact that there's something of a ground zero around the issue, right? That they're more than a lender. We're actually considering them a partner in the exhibition. So the idea that the show will travel to Richmond, it'll be reconfigured. They don't have a Geffen, so it won't be centralized as much as it can be shown at different venues around Richmond. But part of the mandate that the Black History Museum of Virginia has, they're now the stewards of the monuments from Monument Avenue. Part of the mandate is that they use them for outreach and education, that they have a very public facing, to use them to raise awareness as part of their stewardship with the objects. Now, I bring this up in relationship to the thing about fundraising, just as an example, where one, the exhibition is helping them achieve that mandate that the state, placed on them in order for them to become stewards of the things. And two, that they are able to use the exhibition in terms of fulfilling that mandate for fundraising purposes, right? Which has been so in terms of they're using it strategically, which I think is great. We would love to do the same thing with Cottleville, right?
Hi, everyone. This is Bennett Simpson from MoCA jumping in. I love just a little tiny bit of perspective. A big show such as this, with subject matter such as this, will attract a lot of attention in downtown Los Angeles. And, routinely, the major exhibitions at the Geffen attract 300,000-400,000 people per year. So it will get a lot of attention, and it will raise a lot of awareness. People will see it.
I see Karen has her hand up. Karen, did you have a comment to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that we are still in touch with Scott Lewis from Cottleville. In December, he had been submitting a grant, which he didn't get. And they had tentative approval for the land to be donated, which is the land that's adjacent to the Archer Alexander Creek, and that they were in the process of becoming a 501c3. So they were in in process with that. And just a couple weeks ago, he reached out looking for some dimensions to work with an engineer on. So we are very much still working with them and talking to them about their processes.
Great. And Karen, could you just say a word or two about our process with a loan in terms of the loan agreement? If we were to vote on something today, is the loan agreement still in the works? Is that?
It is. We have a draft of it. The draft should have been in your folders. We have been working with legal on it. We were looking at loan forms that the library uses, making sure that this is something that the city can do. So using that as a precedent and adjusting it for our needs. Obviously, we'll share it with LAX Art and MoCA for their review, and we'll keep going back and forth. But this vote will be sort of a first step in moving forward in that process. But we will still have paperwork to figure out.
I have one other comment, and then I'll continue to open up to John. You'll be next. But we heard in our community process that the image of this portrayal did harm to people, and that's one of the reasons. That was sort of one of the strong emotional things that we heard about it. And I'm curious about its positioning in your space relative to public sightlines and that sort of thing. It seems like there's a quite transparent facade to the museum. Have you thought about, I mean, once you're in this space, you're already agreeing to be part of this discussion and perhaps to expose yourself to portrayals that you're ready for, but is there any concern about it being visible to the public that could feel that same sense of harm that our community felt?
Well, if I could speak to that rather forthrightly, I mean, that's what museums are here for, in part, right? To be a place where subject matter with varying degrees of difficulty can be contextualized and unpacked and discussed, and to mediate that impact through discussion and contextualization. So it will be amongst other works that are, it's going to be a strong show. In terms of
my question was, is it visible to a passerby on the street who
no, it's not visible. It's okay, that question, I thought it's like, had to do with the nature of like, will people be able
I'm
to?
excited about you understanding it in the museum. I just was concerned about the harm that we had heard from our community of it in the public realm without any interpretation around it. So thank you. Okay. And John, you had a question.
Sure. Thanks, Hamza. I'm thinking about, as you and Bennett are organizing the exhibition and also thinking about the publication, just to know a bit more, given that sort of the legacy and history of this exhibition will live on through the publication, how you're thinking of contributors, any of the artist contributions. If you have that information yet available, I'd be curious to know a little bit about that.
We do, and I don't know, Hannah, did we set in the proposal, did we make mention of all the contributors in the written proposal?
Yes, I believe that there were contributor bios. If for some reason that didn't make it in there, I'm happy to send that after the fact. But we have the publication is going to be 2 volumes. So one will be available when the show opens. The second will come out, shortly after, because it will include installation shots. So the first one, and again, this is not totally set in stone, but thinking about them as one is very dedicated to the past and the scholarly issues, and then some of the other is sort of like in the contemporary and dealing with the show more explicitly. We have, as Hamza mentioned, the contributors are historians, art historians, other types of scholars in the field that really we're thinking about this show super holistically, and that this is almost like a reader in a way of this issue. And so it's about monuments and the Civil War and Confederacy and representation of those topics, as well as the history of Black resistance to them. And thinking about these the historic monuments as objects within an American art tradition and what that says and how we think about them. I mean, I think in a lot of the public conversations about them, it's the way that we interact with them in our daily life and what they stand for, but we don't necessarily always look at them as art objects. And so we're digging in also to who physically made these things and where are they from. I think it's also really important for us to tell the stories of how they came down as part of a longer history of these objects. So in some cases, a case study perhaps of looking at a single object through the lens of different stakeholders, so activists, politicians, artists. Again, we're still very much in the process of developing, but we do have a significant suite of scholars who are writing about that, and we are very much looking for the energy of today as well, bringing that to the current moment, because I think it's a both and. You can't have one without the other. You can't understand the issue in its whole without having the past and the present together.
Exactly.
All right. Are there any other comments from commissioners before I'd open up to the public? Hearing none, I will see if there's any comments from members of the public. If you raise your hand, we can call on you. Give it just a minute. Karen, I'm wondering if we don't have comments from the public, whether you might advise a little bit on a motion that we might consider. Is this a motion to approve
An outgoing loan?
What's that?
To approve an outgoing loan, a temporary for a short-term exhibition.
Mm-hmm. And are we approving it, or are we approving your ability to negotiate it? Because there isn't a final.
You're approving it, and then I'll.
Okay, and then you will complete the process with legal and all that after we give it approval.
Yeah.
Or if we give it approval. Okay, great. So with that, I mean, I personally, I feel like this is a really strong thing for us to do. It answers many of the calls that our own community asked about this statute being better interpreted, and it puts it in a context with a larger story and exposes it to many people who wouldn't be exposed to it in the coming 2 years. Perhaps we could include a provision within our motion to reference Cottleville as a possible part of the discussion to happen in the future. We haven't made any agreements with Cottleville. We haven't, we haven't as a commission reviewed anything as a proposal from them, but we also don't want this to preclude that possibility. So maybe there's some language in there that we could use that continues that conversation. And if, for instance, if we are able to come to an agreement with Cottleville, if that does happen, that the second destination of it after Los Angeles or the third destination might be Cottleville instead of Boston. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the temporary loan of the Emancipation Group for the exhibition monuments at LA MoCA, with the proviso that it would be returned for a long-term loan to Cottleville.
That it could be, let's say, I don't think it would be. We haven't made that decision, or that it could be.
It could be, yes.
Okay. Great.
I'll second.
All right, Kara seconded. So I'll take the roll call. Aqua?
I'm going to say an enthusiastic yes.
Yes, enthusiastic yes. Camilo?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I would also be an excited yes, not just enthusiastic, but excited. I hope to see the show. I think we'll all learn a lot from it. So thank you for putting all this good work together and for coming to us. And I hope that we can also share content with you that might help shape the way you interpret the piece.
Please do.
There's quite a lot here in our archives and stories to tell from our process. So we'd love to share that with you. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our next presentation for review is the Pictures of the Year proposed by Boston Press Photographers Association. Brian Snyder will be presenting. Brian?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I
Yes.
think I'm unmuted. Okay. I hadn't expected to have, I covered the Charleston story and the Charlottesville anniversary. I wasn't anticipating revisiting that in my head today. Anyway, so the BPPA is back. We did this exhibit last year. You'll remember in Copley and Nubian Square. It sort of realized a really long-term goal of the organization to put these pictures back out in the public as a sort of giving back and as a summary of the previous year and a way to think about it. Sort of perverse or something that it took COVID to make it happen, but we'll take it. So we'd like to, the goal was to make it an annual exhibit. So the proposal is essentially not any different. It's the same cubes. There's 8 instead of 10. The location we've gotten approval from the parks folks for Copley. Judge Gordon's Square or Gordine Square is under construction. So we've gotten permission for a spot along around Jamaica Pond, which should be really, that'll be a nice change of venue. So yeah, the only other thing I'd say is that, well, 2 things, but mainly is it was really amazing last year. Every time I went to just sort of, I would go and just sort of watch people looking at the exhibit or not, but it was remarkable how every time I went, there were people looking at every panel, every picture, reading every caption, spending a lot of time with it. Not just sort of walking by and glancing, but really taking it in. And, especially in this day and age as a journalist and a photojournalist, that was particularly gratifying. The level of involvement and engagement was we didn't know what to expect, but that was amazing. The community engagement component will be similar. GBH is on board to help us get the word out and reach a larger audience, to let them know it's there and to offer forums to talk about what's there and talk about photojournalism. There's the hope that we can do some in-person stuff there, given that COVID is a little less, we think a little less of an issue, and maybe some things would be possible with school groups and other organizations, though, the whole COVID thing kind of, that's a negotiation regardless. So anyway, I didn't have a lot more to say. If there's any questions about what's in it this year, what's changed, what's the same, I'm happy to try to answer.
We remember the setup, but I'm curious about the artists themselves. So these are some of the artists that'll be featured.
Yeah, so these are this year's set of images, so the pictures will be the Boston Press Photographers runs an annual contest where we bring in 3 judges from around the country who are either photojournalists or editors or people in the industry. And there's 12, 14 categories of different parts of what we do. So it ends up being a sort of reflection of a year, the best of a year as seen by photographers based in Boston. It's at once very local, the photographer of the year and the best in show. The main story in her piece was about lobstering in Maine and sort of the impact of lobstering, impact of climate change on the lobster industry on an island in Maine. So that's really local, and then it broadens out all the way to the Olympics and the success and failures of the sports teams. There was coverage of the January 6th riots or attack. So it's both intensely local and national as sort of a record of a year.
Okay, great. So are there any comments or questions from commissioners?
Mark, if I remember last year, we had some comments about the advertisement. I see the canon and I can't remember exactly how we sort of addressed that comment. Wanting to make sure it doesn't end up being advertisement for a particular company or product. So I don't know how often, Brian, I don't know how often Canon shows up, or it was just on the, because they sponsored this, don't they? Or
Yeah, so
maybe
we
you can sort of
didn't
talk
change,
more about that.
the design hasn't changed. The placement, size, frequency, none of that has changed. So nothing, it'll be no more than what you approved last year. I'm sure you understand that doing this doesn't come free, and doing the contest and bringing in the judges and everything else. So a variety of the, not all, but some of the categories are sponsored. Canon isn't the only one. The local sports teams, well, the Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots are sponsors. The Animal Rescue League is a sponsor. Sorry, Canon, Sony. So not even every category is sponsored. There are, you're really putting me on the spot, I think 7 sponsors total. So that would be of the 8 times 4 of the 32 panels, there would be 7 instances where they would appear. If my math is right, I did go to art school, so I think I did that right.
I remember the issue, Michael, but I don't remember how we resolved it, and we must have because it happened.
My memory is that originally the design had them on the top of each panel, and we moved them to the bottom after the input from the commission, and that was how it was resolved. Like I say, nothing has moved, nothing, it's no different than what you approved last year.
Okay, other questions from commissioners? Or are there comments or questions from the public? If so, please raise your hand. Hearing none. Oh, Tani?
Yeah, just coming from the Indigenous perspective here, you mentioned the sports teams. I just wanted to make sure that the racist mascot teams were not involved or promoted in this manner.
In terms of the sponsors, it's the Celtics, Bruins, Patriots.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, yeah, if that's what you mean, the sponsors.
Yeah, we just want to make sure the Kansas City Chiefs, the Braves.
Yeah, I guess
so
I
on,
hesitated
Blackhawks.
because
Okay,
I don't know off the top of my head if there's a photograph that depicts game action from a game that includes one of those teams. That I really don't know off the top of my head, but none of them are sponsors or supporters.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for that one.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to split hairs with you there. I didn't know where you were going, but
Okay, seeing no other questions, is there a motion on the floor?
I move that we approve this project to go forward.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Robert. Bob?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for a second. I'll read off the list. Aqua,
Yes.
Camilo,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Cara. I think she may have had to step out. Bob,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So congratulations. Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
look forward to seeing this in Copley Square and in JP.
yep, and we'll see you in a year. Well, we'll try to time it better, and maybe in 10 months, we'll get our act together a little more for next year.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, next we have a proposal from the Boston Women's Heritage Trail to add a plaque to the Boston Women's Memorial. Lulu Zeibenberg is presenting tonight. Lulu?
Hello, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. We are proposing a plaque be added to the Boston Women's Memorial on Commonwealth Avenue. Next slide. So a little bit about our organization. We were founded in 1989, and we have worked to restore women to their rightful place in the history of Boston and in school curriculum by uncovering, chronicling, and disseminating information about the women who have made lasting contributions to the city of Boston. Next slide. So the Boston Women's Memorial is on Commonwealth Avenue. It was designed in 2003 by Meredith Bergman. The memorial honors Abigail Adams, Lucy Stone, and Phyllis Wheatley. The memorial has become part of Boston itself and represents a new forefront of thinking about public art and a representation in public art. Next slide. So our proposal is the Talking Statues Project. We were inspired by the Women's Rights Pioneers Monument created by Monumental Women in New York City. We request the Commission's approval for the addition of a plaque specifically designed by the memorial sculptor Meredith Bergman. So on the plaque, there will be a QR code where visitors can scan it and listen to the words of the three women spoken by three of the most influential female politicians from Massachusetts today. Senator Elizabeth Warren will be reading for Abigail Adams, Representative Ayanna Pressley will be reading for Phyllis Wheatley, and Mayor Michelle Wu will be reading for Lucy Stone. The scriptwriter is Joanne Parent. I believe you have access to the script in your folders. And she is the one who wrote the Talking Statue script for Monumental Women, which was a statue also designed by Meredith Bergman in Central Park in New York City. The actresses reading for Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were Viola Davis, Meryl Streep, and Jane Alexander, respectively. So the short audio recording will be accessed via the QR code, and it will enrich the learning experience for visitors. For visually impaired visitors, the audio experience will also be accessible with the inclusion of Braille adjacent to the QR code. And we view this project as hopefully setting a precedent to add Braille and audio recordings to all monuments in Boston, making them more accessible. Next slide. So the QR code, which will be generated by Talking Statues, the same company responsible for the Women's Rights Pioneer Monument, will lead visitors to a webpage on our website, the Boston Women's Heritage Trail website, and the site will include the audio recording, biographies of the women commemorated by the memorial, and information detailing Meredith's work. Our intention is to also translate and record the recordings in Spanish and Mandarin, and we will use the same QR code, so we won't have to keep on changing the plaques. And the plaque will finally recognize the sculptor Meredith Bergman, who uses her talents to bring together history, art, and learning. When the statue was installed in 2003, the city promised Meredith that her name would be inscribed on the memorial, but nearly 20 years later, she has yet to receive the credit she deserves. Our proposed plaque will finally make good on this longstanding promise. Next slide. So this is the design that Meredith created. As you can see, it has her name also in Braille, Talking Statues, the company making the QR code, and the QR code. Next slide. So some details about the plaque. The plaque will be made out of bronze. We propose commissioning the International Bronze Plaque Company to create the plaque. We propose them because we learned from Frida Garcia that the current plate on the Harriet Tubman Step on Board statue on City Park land in the South End will be replaced by a brass plaque manufactured by the same vendor we are recommending, and the dimensions of the plaque will be 4 by 8 inches. Next slide. So the placement of the plaque, per Meredith's suggestion, the plaque will be installed on the outer corner of Lucy Stone's dark gray pedestal. You can see it in the picture where the folder is lying. The plaque will be horizontal, so it's easier to read and scan, and it is also at a point that is wheelchair accessible, making the QR code accessible to all visitors. Next slide. So the installation of the plaque will be installed by Josh Crane of Deidas Art under the supervision of Meredith Bergman, who's the sculptor. Meredith has suggested that the plaque be installed in the standard, most elegant and simple way, with small holes being drilled into the granite, epoxy poured in, and small threaded rods protruding from the underside of the plaque down into the holes. The plaque will then sit flush with the granite invisibly installed, and where if the plaque ever needs to be removed, a professional art restorer can cut the rods and fill the holes in with granite with the matching filler so they can disappear, and the $500 cost of the plaque will be paid by the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. That is all. Do you have any questions?
We'll open up to commissioner questions. I just did want to confirm that a wheelchair could get to, I don't know how close it is to the curb.
Yes, a
In terms
wheelchair
of-
can get
so
to the plaque.
wheelchair can get, it's several feet away from the edge of the curb.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions from commissioners?
I would say not a question, but just a comment. I think this project's exciting. This piece probably receives the most attention of the pieces of public art along the Commonwealth Mall. So it's exciting that visitors and the public will have an additional way to engage with this really nice monument. So thank you.
It's good to know if QR codes go away that this can be removed, and yeah, I don't think we really have a policy about QR codes, do we, Karen?
No, but we're very interested in seeing, how it goes.
And they are legible on a, I mean, there's enough contrast for a phone to pick it up as a QR code when it's in
Yes.
runs? Okay, great.
There will be, and the QR code will lead to our website. So it will also be able to, visitors will also be able to get information about other monuments in the city if they look through our website. Yeah.
Great. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? How about the public? Any members of the public would like to make a comment? Oh, Aqua has a comment. I can read this out. Will you keep track of how many people use the QR?
Yes, so Talking Statues has a feature where they keep track of everything. And when we met with Monumental Women, they told us they had about a couple thousand visitors monthly scanning the QR code. I don't know the exact number. And if you would like that, I can reach out to Monumental Women. They are also in Central Park. So their numbers might be different, but there is a way to keep track of that. And we would be happy to keep on sharing that with you monthly if the commission would like that.
Says thank you. Camilo?
Yeah, it would be nice to get that information actually for our, interactivity with the audience. But then I wonder what kind of privacy concerns we may have from the audience as well.
I think I can answer that question. I'm Meg Campbell, a founder of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail, and working with Lulu, our fabulous Wellesley College intern. There won't be any personal information. It would just be like a report of, visits to the site.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners or the public? Hearing none, I wonder if we could have a motion on the floor. Brian, would you like to, you express some enthusiasm? You want to be our motion maker today?
Sure. Yeah, I can make a motion to approve the final design of the Boston Women's Memorial signage proposed by Boston Women's Heritage Trail.
Great.
I second that.
Mila, thank you for the second. I'll read down the list and say yes if you agree with the motion. Aqua?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Camilo?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Cara? I think she's still out. Bob?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So the motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you. We look forward to seeing this installed soon and to listening to the stories.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks. Okay, our next presentation for review is for short-term sculpture installation in LoPresti Park from Now and There, Public Art Accelerator artist Eli Brown. Sarah will introduce the project and the artist. Sarah?
Sarah, you're muted.
You might be muted, yeah.
I might be doing one too many things. Thank you so much.
Running the ship.
As you just mentioned, the site for this project is LoPresti Park in East Boston, which is marked in a yellow circle in the photo on the top left of your screen. LoPresti is on the harbor with views overlooking downtown Boston, the North End, and Charlestown. And this proposed project will be sited on a jetty at the edge of the park, which is marked in red in the middle image, and you're looking at it over on the right towards Boston. Parks has supported this project, and Eli worked out the siting with both Paul McCaffrey and the Parks Department, and worked with Patricia Mendez and the Commission for Persons with Disabilities around accessibility issues. So the city's been very involved in this. And now I'll introduce Eli. Eli Brown is an interdisciplinary artist working in sculpture, comics, and community organizing. Eli's work explores queer and trans intimacies through time and cross-generational dynamics. They are especially interested in asking what the future of human evolution could look like if we reimagined reproduction as a queer ecological strategy. Recent work has been featured at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, Huntington Library, the Cordova Sculpture Park and Museum, and Creative Time Summit X. Welcome, Eli.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to consider this project. This is my first time doing this, so be kind. Okay, so yes, a lot of my work deals with the idea of naturalizing queer and trans identities and relationships by providing evidence of those behaviors and relationships in nature. And this project has some of that, but it's mostly talking about survival strategies that these very common tidal zone dwelling animals possess that we maybe tend to overlook, and asking what can we learn from them about collective survival. So yeah, here's a rendering of what the sculpture will look like. So Boston's about 30% landfill, and maybe next slide. And when you look at the projections for sea level rise, you can see that the areas that are most affected, at least in Boston, are those outermost landfill sites that destroyed all the tidal flats. So this project is also interested in that sort of like poetic justice of the return to what was. And so the site that I'm proposing has been actually built out to allow tidal waters to enter. And one of the pictures, you maybe could sort of see that first picture. So after a high tide, there's some, yes, thank you, Sarah. After high tide, there's some debris that gathers around the circle and leaves this sort of trace of the tide. So we can go forward now to, sure. So here's some inspiration photos, examples of sort of how I reached the design of the object that has both of these elements of a UFO and a shell. And so next slide. These are some of the species that I've selected. So everyone lives in the tidal zone and everyone has something to offer us about how to adapt and evolve and survive in these extreme wet and dry scenarios that we are living in now and moving towards. So for example, the Nautilus has lived over 500 million years and survived several extinction events. Next slide, please. So the project has several elements. First, it plays with this idea of the encountering someone or something that is unknown to us. So using this large object that's this mix of a UFO and a shell to hopefully stir up wonder, curiosity, and invite people into this sci-fi narrative. So we come in closer and we find these porthole windows and this sort of command center where each window has a different tidal animal, what look like fossils of local species that we all recognize, like oyster, barnacle, moon snail. And so it appears like these small creatures are actually in control of this sculpture. And then there will be a historical sort of marker passing as those that you find all over the city near the sculpture that gives this illusion that the object has a historical significance. But instead of facts, there will be narrative and questions, sort of prompts that start the conversation about these tidal animals. as well as a QR code that leads us into this virtual comic book space. And the comic book takes place in East Boston and illustrates the animals, provides some facts about how they've survived and adapted, and follows this kid who sort of takes us through the landscape of the near future East Boston. So we learn about sort of how this kid can sort of use these facts about the different tidal animals and translate them, bring them back to their community, and talk about how to use those strategies for humans. And so that comic book will get printed as a zine in English and Spanish and distributed as a free coloring book at local stores. It's really important to me that people who live nearby can feel connected to the installation. So I've been talking to Quinones at East Farm and reaching out to local schools to collaborate with elementary and middle school age kids on parts of the comic book. So asking them to design their own water dwelling survival strategies and exhibit some of their illustrations alongside the sculpture for its duration. So that would either happen in the virtual space or in the physical space. And I guess next slide would be here's, so the installation is, the goal is for the last week of June with a deinstallation in early January. And next slide, here's a drawing that gives you a sense of the scale. So the sculpture is 15 feet in diameter at its longest, and then 5 feet tall at its tallest point. And it's constructed from secondhand EPS foam and plywood, and it will get a weatherproof coating, primer paint, anti-graffiti, waterproof clear coat. And I think in the previous photos, it sort of shows that the sculpture is at a 30-degree angle. So it's getting propped with pressure treated lumber and then weighted with, here's the engineer I've been working with, their drawing of the 3,000 pounds of sand. It will sit in, there's sort of this like empty core in the middle of the sculpture where the sand will go and weight it down. And I think that's all I have. So.
Okay. Thank you, Eli. We'll open it. I don't know, Kate, did you want to say something before we start? Okay, you're good.
No, thanks.
All right. I do have one question that maybe can start off is, it seems like it does invite climbing if the small windows are up, you know, are the sort of objects of desire to see these, the drivers, I guess. Has your engineer worked through that question of whether it could be climbed on?
Yes, I think everyone assumes that it will be climbed. I mean, I hope it will be climbed on. I think that all of those considerations are like the wind, the water. It's a pretty windy site. So the engineer's aware of all of that. And so we're still working on it. But I think according to them, the 3,000 pounds should more than do it. So that's my understanding, is that yes, they're very aware of the possibility of people climbing on the thing.
Okay.
You can even see that in the drawing, I think.
A load from people hanging. Okay. Thank you. Other questions from commissioners? How about members of the community? Seeing none, I will just bring up one other thing, which is I love the idea that this gets distributed to young people, and that's part of the mission here is to teach some stories through maybe a kind of fantastical device of storytelling. All right, so hearing no comments, should we move to a motion? Anybody like to put a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion to approve the Eli Brown sculpture.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, that was John?
Yes.
Okay. And Camilo made the original, just for the record. So I'll read off the list and say yes if you agree with the motion. Aqua?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Aqua. Camilo?
Yes.
Thank you, Camilo. John?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Cara? I don't think she's back. Bob?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So Eli, congratulations. The motion passes. We look forward to seeing this.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we weren't too tough, were we? Okay.
No.
Good. All right, so next we have our next presentation for final design of Soul Revival by Victor, Marca 27, Quinones. I'm passing to Karen.
Thanks, Mark. So we're really excited about this proposal tonight. This comes as part of our Transformative Public Art program. And it is one of several projects that were proposed to us. The sites were proposed to us by the Boston Housing Authority, and they've been wonderful partners. In particular, we're very thankful for the collaboration of Letitia Raymond for proposing the wall and supporting all of our projects at Boston Housing Authority sites and facilitating community meetings. She's not able to be with us tonight, unfortunately. This site is an apartment community called Washington Manor, located at 701 Washington Street in the South End. The location is marked on the map to the right, and we'll provide more neighborhood context a bit later in the meeting. And we'll be collaborating on this with Youth Lead the Change. As research on the project, Victor requested building demographics from the Boston Housing Authority, which I'll share. There are 51 residents, 23 identify as female, 28 as male, according to their the data they shared. The age range is 36 to 87, 15, I believe self-identify as Asian, 2, I believe self-identify as white, 34 self-identify as Black or African-American, and 2 self-identify as Hispanic or Latino. Now I would like to introduce Marca 27. Victor Quinones is an international street artist who works at the intersection of contemporary art, graffiti, vinyl, toys, fashion, and design with paintings, murals, drawings, mixed media pieces, and private commissions for major brands. His robust palette blends elements of street and pop culture with Mexican and indigenous aesthetics, a signature look the artist has coined neo-indigenous. Marca 27's work has become part of graffiti and street art history, but he has flourished as a product designer, gallery artist, toy designer, and more. Marca 27 has emerged as one of the most sought after muralists in the world, mastering his craft since before street art was even a term. We have worked with Marca on many projects, which you may recognize, at least a couple above. You can see in the top left, Love Thyself, which really was one of the projects that started the Transformative Public Art program. In Grove Hall, and on the lower left, I'm sorry, it's not a better photo, but we have Back to the Essence in Magazine Street, on Magazine Street in the New Market. And the other pieces is Coexist in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And with that, I will pass to Victor.
Thank you, Karen, for the intro. I just want to say thanks to the Boston Arts Commission for taking the time to look over this proposal. And just a tiny bit of history. The first time I ever painted in Boston was in 1999. And I'm really humbled to be here over 20 years later, having this opportunity to paint possibly one of the largest murals ever painted in Boston. This thing is approximately 85 feet tall, including the extension, and about 41 feet wide. So it's it's a monster of a project, but I'm more than excited and willing to partner with the Boston Arts Commission, as well as the community that is allowing me the space to work with them and partner with them on this project. The people that are familiar with the South End, they might remember a party that used to happen back in the days, a house party called Soul Revival. It's a nod to the history of that party, history of the people that were surrounded by that community. It actually started with a lot of people that were being rejected at local establishments for the way they looked, for the way they carried themselves, for having sneakers, whatever excuse they had. They weren't allowed to just go out and have a good time. So at the Via Victoria, they started their own kind of cultural community where they would have DJs and performances happening there, and they would call it Soul Revival, which is the title of this mural. It really has a lot of significant meaning when it comes to the people that it represents around the South End, and especially this area, especially the community that is within the building. You can go to the next page. So these are just a couple of call outs that were really important to, reflect what the community was speaking to me about. I was, lucky to have Letitia and Sarah partner with me when we spoke to the community that lives in this Washington Manor building. A lot of the community expressed some of the things that, they would like to see in terms of representation, where they're from, what's important to them culturally. It was a really wonderful meeting, and spoke to people from all walks of life. And most importantly, just really got to connect with them on what they like in terms of the work that I was sharing with them and some of the artwork that I shared with them in the past. This mural is just, this design is just merely a mock-up compared to the actual painting. There will be a little bit more liberties in terms of adding a couple of more cultural references in terms of patterns that represent other cultures that are represented within that community, as well as bringing in a little bit more vibrancy. The mural will wrap around the entire building from left to right. If you look at the details, there's significant meanings between the cherry blossom, the lotus, which is a symbol of faith and unwavering faith, and as well as revival. The dragon is a symbol for prosperity and abundance. It's also a symbol for protection and power. The cherry blossom has always been a representation for life and also female beauty. The mother represents the creator of life, and the child, the beautiful child, represents legacy that continues from our ancestors. So all around, most importantly, the murals that I've painted throughout my entire life have always been about representation of, groups that unfortunately do not get recognized as much as they should. Is predominantly, Black and Brown BIPOC cultures. And these murals really are just meant to create awareness, to create a sense of pride, to, control our own narrative as artists. You can go to the next page. That's just an angle shot from a distance, so you can get an idea of what the mural looks like when you're driving down Washington. You can go to the next shot. That's just an area of a lot of the artwork that's, in public art that's already in the landmark district. Next page, please. This is some of the historical murals that have happened in the area, dating all the way back to 1970 by Sharon Dunn. Go to the next page, please. Also more examples of artwork that's been created all around the area. You can keep going. This particular wall, you can go back to that one. Peters Park has significant history. It's one of the first places I painted when I was in Boston back in 2000. Peters Park was one of the first safe havens for graffiti artists to have a legal place to paint in Boston since the early 80s. You can go to the next page. And just more examples of murals and public art that are within that area. Go to the next one. The next one. This I have to stop. Obviously, this is my brother Rob Pro Black Gibbs. Beautiful project he did with Now and There back in 2019 off of Tremont Street, and just again, you know, reassuring our commitment to uplifting, you know, our people, our communities, and also just really setting an example as artists, men of color, fathers, people that are just, you know, really just trying to change the narrative and also have younger people follow in our footsteps. Next page. Another very large scale mural, literally just a few blocks away from the site that we're looking at now. Next page. Another example of a mural that's just a few blocks away from where we're proposing the Washington Manor apartment mural. Next page. Another example by Timothy Cool. This was done recently in 2017, also very close to the area where we're painting, proposing to paint. Next page. That's it. If anybody has any comments or questions. Karen has.
I'll open it up. I may just begin us off by saying I live just off of Tremont Street and I work just off of Tremont Street. So I pass by the Pro Black one pretty regularly now and love it. And it's nice to know that there'll be another mural coming my way for my daily walk. I just think the image is so powerful in that existing mural, and your proposal seems like it will be in that same family of a kind of very powerful image for the community. So thank you very much for presenting. Let's see if there's commissioners who maybe have questions.
I just want to second just what you said, Mark. Victor, I think the mural is, or the mock-up for the mural is spectacular. I think it creates so much drama and color that people are not going to be able to take their eyes away from it. Thank you very much.
Mark, I did just want to jump in and add as a note that we are aware that this is in the South End Landmark District, and we're working on an application to landmarks, which is due May 16th. So if we're able to get your approval tonight, it will really strengthen our application. And in preparation for submitting that application, all that research that Victor just went over with you will be included. We really are looking to show that murals are part of the vernacular of the South End and the culture there, and the cultural storytelling that is important to the true story of the people who live and have lived in the South End, and in particular to this Boston Housing Authority site, Washington Manor, where people call home, and to interrogate a little bit about what cultural stories are able to be told through the architecture and artworks in the South End, and who gets to determine that.
Karen, on the examples that were shown, have you checked to see if any of those had been previously approved by the commission?
We know that Rob's was.
Okay.
We were there for that, but I think some of them were made before the commission existed, I believe. And we've been in discussion with the staff there and really trying to understand what their goals are and how we can have a conversation about the needs of the community, and, you know, possibly a request for exemption from some of their guidelines. That, you know, for one thing, that this building is not contributing. This is not one that is sort of one of the typical ones that they might be most interested in. It is something we've also been doing, taking some photos of it from shots of the wall from different places along Washington Street, and really trying to prepare for that meeting, and anticipating a great conversation with them.
Yeah, I only bring it up because sometimes people show examples and then the commission will start questioning whether or not they actually approved it, and then it can get sidetracked. So I just
Sure.
would advise that you really have some research and make sure that what you're showing is something that either been approved by the commission or maybe was installed before. But I would defer to the commission staff in doing that. But
Thank you.
just in my experience.
Makes sense.
So,
Sorry, I thought it was Tremont Street. Now I see it's Washington. I'm gonna have to take a U-turn on my route to get to see this every day. There's a very similar building on Tremont Street. Yeah, I guess that's sort of an ongoing question that we've faced a few times before with artworks in historic neighborhoods. So it is, I guess there's overlapping jurisdiction. Is that how we would describe it?
Yep.
We never really legally said that we have all purview of artworks and they have a purview of buildings when they're a combination like this. Other comments?
just one other thing is that you may be prepared to discuss the manner in which the mural is going to be painted, what type of paints. I think there could be some comments about this isn't necessarily historic brickwork, but I imagine there'd be some questions about not causing long-term damage, about painting masonry. So I think you may want to sort of make sure you can answer any questions that may come up.
Yeah,
sort of more technical aspects. So
of course, that's something that we're prepared to speak on when the time comes.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's it. That is a Boston Housing Authority building. So I'm actually a resident of the South End as well, and remember going to the Soul Revival parties. Having moved from New York to Boston, I found that was like the only oasis of representation and diversity in Boston. The South End has changed a lot, and there are some people that might want to be represented more. Specifically, I would say the Puerto Rican community in the mural, probably, lowering Latino, brown and brown people communities. I also have a concern with the identification of the child. The mother cannot be identified, but I wonder if the child rights, reproductions, etc., if that is a concern at all that we might have to, worry about. Just expressing it.
I would, no, thank you. Those are all valid concerns. And, as we all know, art is subjective, and it's one of those things that really, honestly, it's subjective and people can find what they want in it. And we're just gonna, hope and pray that people, for the most part, are moved by it in a positive way and, keep going.
Any other questions or members of the community? All right, hearing none. I think it's a very beautiful piece. I'm happy to write, as a South End resident and business owner, write a letter of support if it would be helpful. And I wonder if we could have a very strong endorsement as a motion on the floor that helps. Maybe I can come up with a motion. Let's see. I move that we approve this mural and the story of the South End's diversity that it tells, and the meaningful impact that it will have on our communities.
I'll second that, Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aqua. So I'll read down the list. Aqua?
That would be a yes.
Great. Camilo?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Cara? I think Cara's back, but maybe.
Is back.
Yes, she's typing it. Is that okay? Or do we need a voice? We don't know.
We'll just note in the minutes that it was chatted.
Okay, great. Bob?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And I'm an enthusiastic yes. So there is a unanimous vote in favor of this, and we look forward to you having a similar response from our friends at the South End Landmarks Commission. And we look forward to seeing this in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. And, thank you for being a part of making history, not just only trying to preserve it. And for the comment earlier, there is definitely going to be some Boricua representation within some of the patterns and textiles.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. Our next presentation for final design of Turmoil by Jeremy Sobek Harrison. Sarah will introduce the project and the artist.
Thank you, Chair. You all may remember this commission is for a new artwork for the interior entrance of the Roxbury Branch of the Boston Public Library in Nubian Square. The branch underwent a major renovation led by UTL and in partnership with the Boston Public Library, Boston Facilities Department, and other city agencies. We've commissioned several artworks for this branch. You can see a rendering, but you can actually see the library in person now. It is fully open and it is absolutely gorgeous if you just go down to Nubian. So the last time you saw this project was in October of last year when Sobek came in for the preliminary design approval. He is the artist commissioned for this site. He's a Boston native, born and raised on Blue Hill Ave. The source of his style and a significant artistic influence for him is graffiti art. This is a selection of his past works. As I mentioned, he came in for preliminary design approval in October of 2021. And since that time, and following some of the advice of the commission, he's met with youth, residents, branch librarians, and staff to inform his work. And he's continued to develop and refine his final design, which he's going to present to you now. Sobek?
Yes, how's everybody doing?
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Thank y'all for having me. So the title for this piece is Turmoil, and I'll just kind of read the concept behind this piece. So in this ever-changing art universe, sparks of creativity can often float in a void unnoticed, in need of air. So I twist, bend, fold, and sharpen my edges, tripping over myself, knowing there must be some light amongst this turbulence, all the while gasping for air. Facing this black hole of uncertainty, I hear whispers whimper maturity. After all my turmoil, my light was already bright. I find my own air, taking a deep breath, allowing myself to be sucked in. So pretty much the kind of that big bang flash you see at the top left of the wall, that's kind of my spark of creativity, which has allowed me to come up with this whole abstract 3D flow of, the Sobek graffiti style. And when I'm the rough clouds that are kind of emerging at the bottom left, that is the turbulence I speak of. And the turbulence is really just trying to find myself in like this vast art world where you have street art and all these other amazing things being done. But still kind of the culture of graffiti is still this adolescent, like no good thing that, we all need to grow up from eventually. So that's kind of the turbulence I'm speaking about. And the black hole kind of represents that unknown that is the art world. We all know art has many trends that come and go. And I think one thing that holds true is that graffiti, no matter what people say or think, is pretty much still here, still relevant. In a lot of places around the world, it's still kicking very much so strong. So again, my own personal mission is pretty much Boston's history when it comes to the graffiti and writing culture. But that's pretty much what this whole piece represents. Yeah.
Okay, should we look at, there's 2 more slides, I think, right, Sarah? Just to give us a sense of dimensions.
Yeah, there's some dimensions and some of the technical details, installation details. So you can see here overall, one of the things, I don't want to jump in so back on you, but we did
No problem.
Get approval from the Boston Public Library that you can see here, this is faded out to show you the dimensions of the wall, but the piece will go beyond the initial canvas that was identified and actually take up the whole wall, although it won't all be on panels. And then you can see the structure of the panel pieces itself. I don't know, Sobek, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that installation process between the panels and the direct painting.
Yeah, so I'm glad actually this was approved because it just feels more right to me. I don't mind painting canvases, but you know, I'm an aerosol man, so you know, the brick walls and the concretes and the dirt is kind of where it's at for me. So for the library to approve kind of extending the overall design was really exciting for me. And it kind of, to me, it'll kind of give it this feel of like old school, nude school, like we have the new school way of spray painting canvases and installations and all that stuff. And we still have that old school feel of like aerosol just hitting the wall and, you know, those two different kind of looks. So I'm very excited about that, you know, expanding the whole wall because it will kind of give it two different looks, two different kind of feels. And with the expansion now, it just feels like, you know, I'm consuming that front lobby in like a strong, positive way. Like there's no way to kind of miss this as you walk through those doors. Plus seeing some of these colors reflecting off of the natural light from the windows. Yeah, it gives me butterflies a little bit.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think I recall Aqua maybe saying she wanted more Sobek. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she got it. I don't know. Aqua, do you want to say a word or two about that? I know you can't speak very much, but I'm guessing you like your Sobek.
Yes, I am thrilled with where you landed, Sobek, on this. I feel you, I see you, and everyone that walks into that library is going to be inspired by you. I also see that black hole as the space that creativity emerges from. You know, I just see so many ways of interpreting this. It's not so specific that everyone can find their place in this piece. So thank you for talking to the youth and pushing to get to this place. I really appreciate that. And I can't wait to see this up and installed.
Cool, thank you.
There are comments or questions?
Like Aqua, you know, I find it just an amazing piece and it'll be so special for anyone who enters the library. I also found that your statement was just poetry. And I was hoping that perhaps your statement could be a part of the piece somewhere or a plaque near the piece. I thought the statement was just extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say similarly, Sobek, it's been really fun to kind of see your ideas evolve. I remember the kind of first iteration was a little more literal and similar to Bob's comment and kind of use of the word poetry. I think this piece is a little more poetic and really exciting. And I can't wait to see it installed in the library. So thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners or questions? How about from the public? Any members of the public who'd like to make a comment? All right, seeing none, I think we should have a motion on the floor. I would ask Aqua, but I know it's hard for her to talk. So maybe Bob, would you like to make a motion?
I move that we approve Sobek's piece for the library.
Great.
I'll second that.
Okay, good. At least you got in the second, Aqua. Thank you very much. So I'll read off the list. Aqua?
Yes.
Camilo?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Cara?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Kim?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So it passes it enthusiastically. Thank you so much, Sobek, for a really wonderful work and for working with us too, I think, and listening to the comments that were made last time and producing something incredible.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much.
Awesome.
Great. So this has been exciting to see a number of really great artists come before us today. Our last duty today, with our 2 minutes to spare in our typical time frame, is to adjourn. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Michael. I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Bob, for a second. I'll read off the list. Aqua,
Yes.
Camilo,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Cara,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kim,
She had to jump
oh,
off.
she already adjourned. And I'm a yes to adjournment as well. So we are officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody. This has been a really great day of looking at a number of different proposals and great works of art. It's really inspiring to see. So thank you all and enjoy the sunlight this evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.